Willie.
Yo,
I'm on the other side of it this
we
time, man.
flipped it. It's
Yep.
inverted.
Yeah. Welcome back, guys. This is episode 60, Truth or Theory. It's gonna be a fun one. We got good guests on. We got Ryan Singer, uh, comedian. He's got some funny stuff. He's got his own show. This is gonna be a good one. Are you excited?
Yeah, I'm extremely excited. But yeah, just so everyone knows, listeners knows, I took a vitamin that's not agreeing with me, so I'm off. I'm off my game.
See, that's what I call candy. Whenever there's candy in my apartment, like if like one of my roommates brings a bunch of candy in, I call it vitamins.
Yeah.
And it's like I was like, who brought these damn vitamins into the house? Like uh yeah, so it's funny how vitamins have become, the name for so many things.
Oh yeah. That's gonna be good. Yeah. What do you want to jump into? You want to talk about the?
Did we even welcome him?
Oh yeah. Welcome to the show, of course. I'm
Welcome
sorry.
to our podcast, Ryan Singer.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. There's so much to talk about. I just had a phone call with, literally, it ended a minute before we jumped on, with a guy who is spearheading a paranormal investigation regarding cattle mutilations at a ranch. I think it's in the Colorado area, southern Colorado area, and he was just dropping bomb after bomb on me during this conversation because I'm supposed to have him on Me Paranormal You, which is my paranormal podcast, and so I'll probably end up talking to him tomorrow. But it's trying to re-examine. I obviously it's not my story to tell, at the heart of it is it's a re-examination of the way certain paranormal investigations and the way that we look at things are. It's the way we go about doing our business. And
Right.
this guy is a former law enforcement, and it's really exciting the new perspective that he brings with the diligence and the attention to detail, we'll call it, to the world of the paranormal. Because I do believe that one of the big flaws in the world of paranormal right now is it's just the desperate need for outside validation from the scientific community. And I believe
Right.
these are such disparate fields of study in many ways, and there's also a lot of ways where they are intimately tied together, but that the paranormal community needs to stop looking for outside validation and needs to establish its own system of credibility, its own framework for weeding out the BS that needs to be kicked to the curb, that needs to be discarded as hoax and or trying to just get attention for something, and maybe
Right.
fake in just a little bit, because nothing is just 100% hoaxed, 0% truth, right?
Yeah.
Usually there's a real kernel of truth somewhere, and someone for whatever reason wants to exploit that kernel of truth to get attention personally or for their own, or for the investigation itself or whatever, and it kind of gets away from them. And
Yeah.
we've all been susceptible to that general concept in our lives with all kinds of things. I'm sure it's not like I'm sitting on some high chair of judgment over here, but it's because things get out of our control. Sometimes they become bigger than us and bigger than what they were when they started, and that's the danger that everybody faces, especially in the world of paranormal. And not to mention we're pushing up against so much skepticism, and when it comes to the established sciences and the rule of logic, right?
Right.
That
Right.
dominates everything we do. Like if I can't see it, it's bullshit.
Yeah.
Or I don't know if I should say bullshit on here or not, but
No, you're good
okay.
here.
I was gonna say, because if I couldn't, that'd be bullshit.
Yeah.
No.
Speak freely. This is unfiltered, uncensored.
Yeah, but it leads me into like an investigation I was a part of about a year and a half ago. That is, because I'm a stand-up comedian
Mhm.
for 18 plus years. This last 9 months, obviously 10 months, it's kind of hit the pause button on a lot of that,
Mhm.
for all of us. But one of the other passions I have in life is paranormal investigation, seeking esoteric knowledge. I love talking about Freemasonry or secret lodges,
Oh
secret
yeah.
societies, ancient mystery schools, cryptids, magic, all that kind of stuff. And
Magic is a good one. We should do a show on magic.
oh
Nobody
yeah,
has
there's all
covered
kinds
magic.
of.
That's
I mean,
awesome.
you could do a whole. I mean, I have a whole nother podcast just about magic,
Yeah.
called "This Is Where the Magic Happens." But the
I didn't know about that one.
excuse me, I was approached by a good friend of mine who's a researcher. Predominantly has been a researcher in the field of Bigfoot, and my favorite part about being involved in this community is just how far past. Oh, what are people going to think if they know I'm into Bigfoot and I believe that that Bigfoot are real? Like that's not even something that occurs to me anymore,
Yeah.
which is a nice place to be in, to settle into that. He approaches me about going to a place that he described it as the Skinwalker Ranch of the South. And Skinwalker Ranch is probably the most famous paranormal location in the world. Everybody who's into the paranormal, even just a little bit, I'd put money on that they've heard of it, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, unless they're just only into ghosts, like, because there are different segments of the paranormal community.
Mhm.
But if you're into the paranormal in general, chances are you've at least heard the term Skinwalker or Skinwalker Ranch. And skinwalkers themselves are, as far as cryptids or creatures or entities or beings, whatever they are, as far as they go, I'm not super interested in ever having an encounter, right? I mean, that's not something on my bucket list. That's I guess that'd be more
Terrifying.
on my that'd be on my fuck it list. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like fuck it, I don't need it. I guess, which is the opposite of a bucket list. But when given the opportunity to go to a place that has apparently Bigfoot, other cryptids, interdimensional portals, ghost activity, and other unknown things occurring, orbs, UFOs, all been reported at this particular location I was invited to go to. I mean, who's not going to go to that,
And this is
right?
in the South?
Yeah, it's in Florida,
In Florida. Damn.
and
Wasn't expecting.
it's in like generally in the Panhandle area of Florida, and
That's from the Native American history there, huh?
yeah, there's a ton. The actual house was built on uh, when they were breaking ground for the house. They were finding artifacts, Native American artifacts,
Wow.
in the soil where they were building the home on this like 40-acre property that they had bought to build their house. And I get sold on this idea to go. I'm very excited about it all. And my limited experience looking for Bigfoot, quote unquote, or creatures of the woods and things like that is, was obvious to me, and it was also obvious to the guy who the guy's name is Ed Brown, who put the thing together. And anyway, excuse me, I burped. I just had some Sprite. It's like a weakness, man. The lemon lime combo of the Sprite. Anyway,
Oh yeah.
so
Sprite's great.
yeah, it's so good. And
If I eat Mexican, I have to have Sprite with it. It's weird.
yeah, right. Like it's funny how certain flavors go together. Like if I'm
Yeah.
having pizza, I really have a craving for like cola.
Yeah.
But anything else, it's pretty much Sprite or maybe a Dr. or a Diet A&W root beer, which is the
Yeah.
best. Diet A&W is better than regular A&W. Anyway, so Ed Brown wanted to assemble a team of researchers that had different areas of focus. So Dan Lindholm, which is a guy I'd never met, kind of a Bigfoot guy. He was a Bigfoot guy, and I was a paranormal researcher guy, right? So like going in and looking for hauntings and trying to pick up ghost activity or phenomena, things like that. So that's where most of my experience had been up to that point. Only been out in the woods a couple times looking for Bigfoot. So I get there and I meet Dan Lindholm, and we immediately were two peas in a pod. Love this guy. We get along great. And I actually just had him on my podcast. The episode came out last week. He's part of the research. He's brought into a paranormal investigation research that is happening with the guy I had just gotten off the phone with before we started recording about this. It's bonkers what's going on out here,
Yeah.
and at this particular location. And so if people were interested, they could go look up my podcast and just look for the one from, depending on when they're listening to this, it's the second Dan Lindholm interview. Anyway, so and it just details this thing, and it's It's hard to wrap your brain around. So Dan and I get along. I get along with everybody there. Another guy named Dan is there. He's part of the security team. Another guy is there. He's part of the security team. Because one of the rules of filming the documentary was the homeowners said there's 2 rules about being here and filming on the property. One is you can never be by yourself on the property because it's not safe, especially at dark, especially at nighttime. Do not be alone. There always has to be like an armed security person with you.
Armed?
Yeah.
It's that dangerous. Holy smokes. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, that sounds off some alarm bells for a guy like me. I've never even been in a fist fight. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I've shot a gun before. I don't own a gun. I'm not a big gun guy. You know, my family in Ohio, they all own guns, and I didn't come from like a hunting family, so I just don't have a lot of experience around them. But that sends off some alarm bells when I'm like, I need a guy with a gun by me. Like,
yeah,
this is interesting. Turns out I was like, me and Dan Lindholm, for the most part, and Ed Brown as well. We were like the only ones there who didn't have a gun on them. Everybody else was loaded.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was one of the rules, and the other rule was that we're not allowed to discuss this other research team that comes out to the property for privacy reasons. There's another group of researchers that come out there quite regularly that we're not supposed to be on camera talking about.
So you can talk to them, you just can't discuss what you talked about, or you can't talk to them at all?
No, like we're not supposed to talk about who they are.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and also, I doubt I would ever talk to them.
The Men in Black, isn't it?
Let's just say I probably wouldn't have access to having conversations with these people.
Yeah.
We can leave it at that. But you can kind of figure out like, well, we can probably make some assumptions. But so I'm like, okay, this is really fascinating, right? Like, and a lot of the phenomena have been verified, and there's been other Bigfoot researchers and paranormal researchers out to the property before we got there. The house was, I think it was on the first ever episode of Finding Bigfoot, the TV series, which I've not really seen a bunch of, but I guess, pretty famous Bigfoot show. But I think they were they might be the only episode where the whole episode's devoted to one location.
Gotta be the
I mean, that's how much action's happening out there.
Yeah.
So we get there. The plan is for us to camp on the property, which I'm not a huge fan of the idea going in, thinking I'm going to be camping in the woods where all this crazy shit's happening. And there's nothing but a thin veneer of like plastic or whatever it is separating me from a fucking Bigfoot or something. Right. Like, I don't even like
freaky
having that thin veneer between me and like a large raccoon that's hungry, let alone,
That's hilarious.
People don't say, oh, Ryan Singer, he's such a brave man. You know what I mean? Like, he's a man's man, It's like, it's not really my thing, right? So, which is fine. That's just not who I have been in my life. But anyway, so I'm not in love with the idea of camping. We get there, and a couple of the people who were supposed to be there couldn't make it, couldn't show up. So we have a smaller crew than we anticipate. So it contributes to some like problems with like technically filming and all this other kind of stuff. Anyway, it turns out like I'm the only one who's going to be camping out is what starts being revealed to me. And this is definitely not okay with me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be the only one outside at this place sleeping in a tent.
What?
Like
Ryan, don't worry about it. We got guns. You're okay.
Yeah. Not a good idea. I mean, because the security guys will be staying in a hotel just outside of town overnight. You know what I mean? So it'd just be me outside in a tent.
Oh, no.
Right? That's exactly what I was thinking. Oh, no. So I start to have what can only be described as the most intense level of anxiety I've ever felt in my life start to slowly boil up inside of me like I was a volcano that was getting to erupt into like panic and tears. Just thinking about like this, because I'm meeting the homeowners for the first time, and they're just a married couple. One of them's retired, one of them's still working, so they're of that age. Just normal people. This crazy shit happening.
Yeah, well, they just like, yeah, these things happen. Like it was no big
No,
deal.
no,
Or they
it's
kind of like strap up, guys, because this is gonna get real.
well, they're the ones who made sure that security team had to be there.
So they know something.
Yeah, so yeah, they're well aware of the way things are going out there, and
Geez.
especially the wife, Carolyn. She's the one who really experiences things. Bill, the husband, not so much. Carolyn is very in tune. She comes from a long line of witches, like earth witches. Like,
What's a earth witch?
let's just like, I, I don't really know the specifics of like the type of magic or the practices that her mom and her grandmother, etc., had practiced, or what they used. So I wouldn't want to label them like pagan or
Yeah.
Wicca or whatever, but in general, it is trying to find a concert of balance, like trying to dance with nature.
Right.
Use
Okay.
nature, respect nature, worship nature, the
Yeah.
moon, Mother Earth, the green man, the sun, the powers of water, like just trying to harness and tap into the energy and the powers of water. I think some people would call them geomantic powers
Okay.
relating to the
Interesting.
earth, right? Harnessing the power and the natural forces of earth and nature to affect outcome the same way that certain people may pray to Jesus or pray to Shiva or things like that.
Right.
So she's very in tune with what's going on with the energy in the house around her, right? And what's going on in the house, it turns out as well. So I'm just listening. The fun thing about people is if you don't say anything, people will just keep talking. I don't know if you've ever noticed that.
Oh yeah. I'm a people watcher, and I love to just get somebody on a roll, and I can just listen to them and listen to them.
Yeah, and here's like a trick that I've kind of come to realize throughout the course of my life. When someone's like, there's some things I can't tell you, right? Well, if you just sit there and don't interrupt their flow, usually there's a pretty good chance that they're gonna tell you. You know what I mean?
Yep.
They're just
Yep,
gonna
they'll spill it and be like, "Oh, I can't talk about that." Well, I've already said too much. Let's keep going.
yeah. So that's the way it usually plays out, and not to mention there's so much history and activity of paranormal nature happening out this house that I was like, I don't know how much. I'm going to be here for 5 days and 5 nights. I don't know how much time outside of that I'm going to have to absorb and try to absorb and remember all this information that Carolyn specifically, and also Bill at times when he wasn't at work, is like offering up, right? So I'm just listening. Boom, just listening the whole time I'm there. And especially right when I first get there, for the first like hour and a half, 2 hours, it was just her kind of giving me an overview of all the different things that have been happening on the property over these years. And by the end of that hour and a half, there was no way in hell I'm camping out in a tent by myself on the property when there are creatures, Bigfoot and other unknown, unidentified creatures, making grown men who come packed to the gills with like assault rifles for investigations and things like that. When they leave, they flee the property reduced to tears because of an encounter or, a vocalization directed at them, called the growl is the word they use. Now, spoiler alert, I did not get the growl when I was there, although I did get something else, and I've been in therapy for 18 months ever since I got back from that trip. I never was in therapy before.
Because of that situation?
Because of my experience at this ranch, I ended up going to therapy. But I did not get the growl. I didn't even get the worst of it. Then I fucking walked through the therapist door. You know what I mean? I tell people, I was like, I probably could have used therapy for a while, but it took Bigfoot to get me through the door. But it's like, whatever it takes. And so,
right.
Luckily, it turns out that I don't have to sleep in a tent. We decide because Carolyn's like, I don't feel safe with Ron sleeping. She's from Southern Alabama, so she's like, I don't feel safe with Ron sleeping in a tent by himself. So, so me and Ed Brown, we sleep in a place called the Sugar Shack. And the Sugar Shack is an old shed that's been converted into like a miniature guest house kind of bedroom situation, right? Like a studio apartment almost. And it's got a big bed in it. It's also got a big lazy boy. Ed's like, I'll sleep on the lazy boy. You have the bed. There's probably a 25-year-old window AC unit in one of the windows. There's 2 windows, and they're on adjoining walls. Out of the 4 walls, there's only 2 windows. One of the windows is on the miniature front porch facing the front, and the other one's on the side, which that window with the AC unit faces up through the woods, up towards the house, up this winding driveway hill area filled with trees where the house is.
So the Sugar Shack's not even near the house, really.
Not super close to the house.
Wow.
Close enough to where you could holler really loud at each other from back and forth,
Right.
but you couldn't see. You can't see the person when they're at the Sugar Shack, and you can't see really the person at the house. You have a better chance of seeing somebody up the hill, especially when the trees aren't full, but they're all, it doesn't matter what season it is because it's Florida down there. So the trees are always whatever, filled up. I don't know why I can't remember the word. Trees are filled up, with them green things. Them green things are filling up them trees down here in Florida. And so if I had to guess, I'd say it's 150, 200 yards at the most, maybe 200 yards, 150 yards. So in a California sandy dirt driveway, or a Florida, excuse me, kind of like that dirt you have in Florida. So I'm like relieved that I'm going to be sleeping inside of a structured building. The first night we're there, we're having a good time, getting to know everybody, having some fun, kind of setting up most of the stuff. Don't do a lot of exploration necessarily. Have dinner with the family at the house, have a good time, hear more stories. And then, the next day we're going to get really cracking. So over the course of the next 5 days, we had some really exciting things happen. We found somebody on the team found a print, a large, unidentifiable print in the dirt. So we made a cast with that like liquid pour cement of this pretty giant footprint.
Yeah. Looked like a human, sort of.
No, it was like, but like if, like bigger than Shaquille.
Wow.
Shaquille O'Neal's footprint,
Holy
Damn.
smokes.
And also there were some like other large, like 4-legged animal prints, somewhat close to that, which was interesting. I mean, because, there's panthers in Florida.
Right.
But so that doesn't really exactly reassure me, thinking there might be a panther out on the loose. So we have the footprint. We see a giant X formation, which is indicative of Bigfoot activity marking their boundaries, their territory, many would argue. I'm not an expert in that area, so I don't know. But typically if you find, 2 large pieces of wood that are out of place forming an X, that's kind of like a Bigfoot putting up a boundary line. Like a person would put up a fence between them and their neighbors.
Right.
So we found a giant, we're talking like 2 entire trees. One of them was not even touching the ground in this X formation that was formed. Now, keep in mind also that it was just a year and a half previous, I believe, was it Hurricane Michael? That really devastated Florida and that area. So a lot of trees in this area were felled and knocked down, and so it was difficult to traverse through the woods here because there was a lot of downed trees.
Right.
So could have the hurricane potentially have made this X structure? I mean, obviously, yes, I guess, but like an entire tree upended and then flung and then put in this. I mean, it was an unmistakable giant X. I mean, it was really wild. everybody was very excited about that. I'm spending a lot of time getting to know Carolyn a little bit, trying to connect with her. I'm supposed to do a paranormal investigation inside their home,
Oh wow.
and but Carolyn was still kind of feeling me out, right? And because having someone into your house to do a paranormal investigation is a very personal and very private thing, which I don't know. I don't know if a lot of people, if it even occurs to them to think about that aspect of it. I mean, because you're letting someone come in and snoop around your house,
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
and it's not like I can find a spider and be like, oh, I caught your spider. I'm taking it outside now.
Yeah.
Have a good rest of the day. This is, it's not my job to, or at least I don't clear out spirits. I don't, cross ghosts to the other side. That's not what I'm doing when I'm, investigating someone's home for paranormal stuff or at a location. So, having some guy that you don't really know come and tell you about all this crazy paranormal stuff that's happening inside your house and then leaving you with it, right? Enjoy all the ghosts and shit that I found.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So she was feeling me out for a few days. And we were going around walking through the woods a bunch, doing a lot of that. I think it was like the third night. This is when it started really kicking up a notch. The third night, it's after dark. We're on property that's neighboring the 30 or 40 acres that they own, that we're also given permission to explore. And one of the guys is a former law enforcement. He's former law enforcement now. At the time, he was still active and working. He had a night vision camera, or not a night. He had a heat sensor,
Okay.
like scope
Like
camera.
Predator.
Yeah, and Dan Lindholm and I are doing a paranormal investigation inside an abandoned, rundown cabin that was on this property. And it was filled with, it probably had 600 spider webs and spiders.
Oof.
And it had like just creepy stuff.
JP's
like,
favorite.
Yeah,
That's
right. And there was like just like
for me. I hate
just
spiders.
one single old child shoe covered in dirt in one of the rooms just remains. We found a letter, a handwritten letter in Spanish.
Really?
That was folded up like underneath a pillow, and like a rundown mattress that was just covered in filth and dirt and spider webs in another room. Lots of crazy stuff was happening like the whole time, but like this was some of the like just kind of spooky stuff, right? And so we're inside, not getting a lot of action inside the cabin paranormal wise. I decide like, well, let's try to go outside, because ghosts don't just hang out inside. So, and then we try to summon in some orbs. And by that I mean I tried to get us to connect to the energy that may or may not be there occupying this general space of land, and to see if it would show us through the form of orbs, since it was pitch black out in the middle of nowhere. Like when I first drove into the property, I wasn't sure my 2006 Camry was going to be able to make it because of the road just to even get to their house. So we're in the middle of nowhere, and it's country darkness. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, this would be a great opportunity to see if we can get some orbs, light orbs, to show up, because they've been known to appear sometimes upon command, at least up at the house.
Oh,
and we're a little ways away from the house at this point, but so let's give it a go. So we give it a go, and then Dan Lindholm starts freaking out. I think there's something, and it turns out we think it was just the headlight of a car in the distance, like on one of the country highway roads, right? that he saw. So we kind of realized that's what was happening very quickly. But then, as soon as that settles down, he starts going, there's something running away from me.
Hmm?
He's like, I hear it. And he takes off. This is the thing about Bigfoot researchers. They hear a noise, they run toward it. right? And it's like, ah, and you've got one of two choices. Join them in their pursuit of this creature that is running through wilderness in the middle of total darkness, or stay where you are and be left alone in the darkness because everyone else is running towards the thing that's running away from you.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, it's like you're damned if you do. It's like the
Right.
devil in the deep blue sea, right? Like, quite honestly, or literally in this situation. So I start running towards them, with them towards the thing, because I learned this lesson maybe a day or two earlier during the daytime when we were out in the middle of the woods and we thought we heard something knocking like tree branches over, like loud noise, not just deer
Right.
noise.
Right.
And they took off running towards it, and so I just took off. I learned that lesson very fast. So I'm running with them in pitch darkness, trying to keep my, night vision camera somewhat steady at all possible without tripping and falling. They're getting a little bit ahead of me. Actually, a couple of the guys stayed back. Dan was one of them. Not Dan Lindholm, the other Dan with his heat vision scope. So eventually we give up because there's nothing happening. We start walking back, and Dan with the scope goes, "You're not going to believe what I got." And we're like, "What?" He goes, "There was a creature
No.
out there that I've caught on the on the camera of this thing."
Really?
And so he's got this image, right, of the head of a creature as if it's peering over like the hill, right, as it at the top of the hill. So its body's down the hill and its head's peered up looking towards us where we all were after we got done chasing it, right? He then says, but here's the crazy part. And to be clear, I was not able to see this image in the moment because the scope camera, its battery died.
Oh, of course.
And he says, but he says, here's the thing as well. I then had another creature or something on all fours, like strangely, like kind of stalking towards our direction. And as soon as I went to take a photo of it, the camera died. But I got the first one.
Yeah.
I got the first image. And electronic failure is a huge, to people who aren't into the paranormal, it's a huge joke. Like, oh, every time they want to take a picture, the camera dies,
Right.
But, it's like, it's just one of these phenomena that's part of the paranormal world.
Yeah.
And I've got another a great example of it happening on this trip, right when I had the moment that fucking changed my life forever. It happened during that moment. So we've got this image now, and then a couple days later, that image gets blown up, and then a couple of weeks after the investigation's over, Ed Brown has a friend who is an artist, like a sketch artist, kind of sketching out what the face and the what this thing actually is, and there's people on the fence between whether it was a Bigfoot potentially or a dog man. And when it comes to dog man was a real big fucking joke to me up until about 9 months ago. Well, not 9 months ago, a year and a half ago. And because I was like, dog man, come on. I mean, Bigfoot, I'm on board.
Yeah.
Dog man, come on. Are we just, what's next? Come on. Can we reel it in a little bit? So you got a Bigfoot believer being like, who's really crazy? The dog man believers.
Yeah.
But
That's fun.
then you hear stories about people who, have sightings of dog man, and you're just like, well, I believe the people who say they saw Bigfoot. So am I going to just, am I just going to exclude these other people? So, and Dan, the law enforcement guy who was part of the security detail, we were having a conversation one night by a fire, and we were talking, and he was just talking about connections he has through law enforcement and through the military and things like that, and stories, that these guys share with each other and these gals of encounters and of things they've seen and out in the field. And he said, I'll tell you this, I don't ever want to. And this guy is also a huge Bigfoot guy, and he knows how to track animals. He was like a game warden for California parks and things like that, law enforcement. So he knows how to track animals. He knows how to, do all that kind of stuff. Big into Bigfoot. He tells me, I never want to see a dog man, ever. And I said, but you're so into all this stuff. Why do you never want to see a dog man? This is what changed my mind about dog man. And he said, because I'm afraid it would break me.
Damn.
And what he meant by that was mentally. And he said, I'm worried that if I ever encountered a dog man, that I would just never be able to be the same after that, because it would be so terrifying.
And his idea of dogs?
What's that?
Maybe it would like change his idea of dogs or something?
No, it would shatter all of his courage and his sense of safety and well-being, just on a very primal level.
Yeah, that would be.
Because this is a guy who goes head first out in the woods in the middle of the night. He's not afraid of shit. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
He's a big man. He's not afraid of anything. And the one thing he's open to being afraid of is dog man, out of all the different things, right? Because he doesn't talk that way about Bigfoot. You do hear stories about, like, kids who are lost in the woods and they're like, some large creature took care of me for a day and like brought me berries and things like that. But as a Bigfoot, you never hear a story like that about Dogman.
That's true.
Apparently Dogman is hyper aggressive and has zero benevolence in its body. So there's never such. This is just from like what people talk about, right, inside the community. Yeah. Apparently, there's never a friendly encounter or just a just kind of a base encounter with a dog man. It's usually a fucking terrifying situation.
Like, I don't know what to think. What he looks like? Does it look like a werewolf? Does he look like an Egyptian dog man? Or does he look like Goofy? I don't know.
Yeah, no. Think of like. Do you ever see the Underworld movies?
Yeah.
I think of them kind of like the werewolves in Underworld.
Lycan, yeah.
The Lycans, yeah.
Oh, okay.
What a great franchise of movies.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, he's telling me this story by a campfire late at night. So my anxiety and my fear level is continuously on a steady rise the whole time I'm out here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we had that big night where he caught the image on the scope. The next day, we all go back to that same location to see if we can find any trace evidence, footprints, etc. Try to debunk it, right? We try to debunk what we saw. And it's just about to start getting dark. And Ed Brown, who's in charge of the whole thing, who set up the whole thing, he says, "Oh, Ryan, you need to go back to the house because Carolyn wants you to do the paranormal investigation." I was like, "Oh, okay, so we're all going to go back and do that?" And he said, "No, she wants you to do it by yourself because she thinks you have a different energy than everybody else here." And what she meant by that was everybody else had a gun in a holster and I had crystals in my pocket. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like the woo-woo guy and I won't eat any meat for like a month before a big investigation like that. I stay off like sugars, caffeine to try to like cleanse my pineal gland and get in touch with my intuition and really blast open like psychic ability, right? Just to be more in touch. So I'd been on a pretty big detox heading into the investigation. So I go back by myself, which we're not supposed to do, but it's still daylight. I'm just driving my car back to the property. I change real quick, grab my gear, and walk up the driveway. No big deal. It starts to get dark. I do a paranormal investigation for about 3 hours. Nothing really stood out to me in the moment, other than a few moments where I got pretty creeped out. But then later, listening to recordings that I was making the whole time while I was in there, Ed Brown points out to me, because I just gave him all the files because it was his project.
Mm-hmm.
He found some clips where I'm asking certain questions to a spirit box, and I don't know if you know what a spirit box is or not, but it's like a radio that keeps continuously cycles through the stations for listeners who might not know. And you ask questions, hope to get answers that you shouldn't be able to get. Like you ask specific questions instead of yes or no questions, because any noise through a radio can sound like yes or no. So you try to ask very
Right.
specific questions. So I asked one of the questions I asked that I got a response that I wasn't really aware of at the time. I asked 2 questions that got pretty creepy answers that Ed Brown discovered. I said, why am I here right now? And immediately after I asked that question through the spirit box, you hear the answer, because you set it up.
Mm.
And so when I heard that, I was like, holy shit, that's, that's pretty crazy. And then I said, a little bit later, I asked, is there anything else specifically you want to tell me? I think was the question I asked. And I don't have the audio, but so I can't remember exactly. But I said, is there anything else I need to know? Something like that, in that vein. And the spirit box responds, I'm inside you. Which is creepy as fucking hell.
Yeah,
like to hear
extremely.
the radio say, I'm inside you. Which is weird. And like I said, at the moment, when you're in the moment of this, you don't always hear exactly what the response was from a spirit box, because you've got everything else going on, right? And you're on to the next thing, and it's just, and so finally, Bill and Carolyn come out of the room. We're hanging out for about an hour, chatting about stuff. I'm telling them about the paranormal investigation, nothing crazy. The EMF readers weren't really picking up anything necessarily other than the Wi-Fi router. So no crazy energy there. Even though they do have voice on, they have EVP, they have electronic voice recording of a voice calling their dog, Ozzy, when no one was home. And then you hear the dog's feet run towards the voice.
So wicked.
But I didn't get any, I wasn't picking up any like movement of objects, things like that, right? She goes, oh, but we were in the bedroom the whole time. You need to come in the bedroom. You weren't able to investigate in there. So I get in there with a reader and going around, not really picking up anything. And then she goes, oh, did you get right over here by the door? And I was like, oh, no, I just walked in and then immediately went in to it. And so where she was referencing was there's a mirror on the wall. And underneath that mirror, up against the wall, is a small round table, circular table, that has a glass ornate, like golden, like kind of like a delicate clock, right? That has a glass globe on it, where you can see like the gears moving on the inside. They're gold plated at least. And she goes, you didn't try right here. And so I go over there, and the EMF reader goes bonkers.
How did she know?
And I was like, okay, this is interesting. I was like, can you remove the clock for me? I don't want batteries, or I don't want anything getting in the way. She removes the clock, and on the table you can see it's kind of like sacred geometry engraving on the tabletop. It's reminiscent of like the flower of life design.
Okay.
And she removes the clock. The reading does not subside. I was like, okay, well, give me a second. I'm going to go back out to the Wi-Fi reader. I'm going to get a reader from the Wi-Fi. I'm going to go somewhere else, and then I'm going to come back here. So I do it. The Wi-Fi sends the meter off. Everywhere else, real quick, as I kind of zoom around, nothing. Come back to that spot. The mirror and the table. The reader goes bonkers. And I was like, something's happening here. What it is ain't exactly clear. And and she looks at me, she goes, this is where I do my prayers. That's where I do, this is where I meditate. This is where I do my magic. It's my altar. And I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
All of the intention and energy and meditation and prayer that you do here has left its mark.
Right.
like quite literally. It exists here. Like this meter is picking it up, right? Like how cool is that?
That is cool.
And I go, but what I find interesting is your altar, with the exception of the clock, it's empty.
Mm-hmm.
Like, where are your magical tools? Crystals, your wand, scepter, things like that. And she looks at me and she's like, funny thing about magic, Ron, it's all in here.
Mm.
And she just pointed to her chest or her body, right?
Right.
And like that was a very profound moment for me as someone who dabbles in magic and is very interested in magical practices.
Mm-hmm.
I can get caught up in like the different crystals and the wands and all this other stuff, right? And like incorporating the tarot cards and all this other fun stuff. But at the end of the day, the human body and the human consciousness, these are the only tools you really need.
Right. Yeah, like
Right.
like you said, like they're just kind of tools at that point if you don't believe in yourself, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And like, why try to fly a kite if there's no wind? If you don't believe wind exists.
Mm-hmm.
So by this time, this is like the third night or third or fourth night. I'm trying to think. Yeah, third night. I'm like settling into this place. Bill and Carolyn are the most beautiful, amazing people, very grounded, normal folk. Getting along, having a great time with everybody on the crew. And I'm feeling more comfortable than I've ever felt at this location since I've been there. Bill and Carolyn sit at the table waiting for everybody else to come back from the location we were the night previous when we got that crazy image. We're having a good time. I'm pulling out tarot cards, and they're corresponding exactly to the conversations we're having. It's like we're really in tune, right? Like I'm feeling locked in.
Yeah.
Like I've got everything going, right? I'm like I'm fucking on all. I'm like we are going on all cylinders right now. This is fucking great.
Yeah.
And so they're just having a really good time. Next thing you know, a couple of the guys come back from the other location. The security team called it a night, went back to the hotel because it was after midnight. So there's like 4 of us hanging out in the kitchen. Carolyn then says, hey, Ryan, I want you to stay at the house tonight because they had a house guest for a couple days previous, but they had 2 guest rooms. And one of the guys was in one of the guest rooms, and then the house guest was in the other. And so now that the house guest was gone, she wanted me to stay in the guest room because she said, I want you to stay in this room because we call it the dream chamber. Because people, when they sleep in this room, they have the craziest dreams of their life.
Really
And I was like, let me get my dream journal,
Yeah.
and my toiletry bag. I'm like, I'm getting my dream journal, my toiletry bag. I'm going to be right back up in this house. And then that's what I'm saying on the outside. On the inside, I'm also thinking, this fucking terrifies me, right? But I know I have to do it because I'm there, right?
Might as well.
And it's kind of like the same feeling I had the first time I smoked DMT.
Yeah.
It's like I'm terrified of this,
Mm-hmm.
but I have to do it. I have to confront this fear and push through it, and just trust that I'll be all right on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
So Ed Brown and I walk down to the Sugar Shack, down the driveway at night, 12:30 at night, whatever time it is, so I can go get my journal and my toiletry bag. We hang out inside the Sugar Shack for a few minutes, bullshitting about what we're going to do the next day. And then I leave to walk up the driveway, 12:31 in the morning in country darkness, all by myself. And I'm not even thinking about that. I just had such a great day, such an amazing night.
Yeah.
I'm feeling so good. I'm feeling so comfortable on the property that I'm breaking the first rule. Don't be alone at night. As I'm walking out of the door and Ed's getting ready to close it behind me, he looks at me and he says, be careful, which is weird because none of us had said that to the other people the whole time we'd been there.
Yeah.
Right. And so it struck me as strange.
Right.
And so as I'm walking off this small little porch of the Sugar Shack, I just say, okay, kind of like confused and thinking that's weird. should I be afraid? Right? And instantly I'm kind of brought back to the reality of my situation because he says that. And fear slowly but surely starts to wash over me again a little bit. And I realize, oh, it's fucking 1 a.m. I'm out here all by myself. Oh, okay. I better hurry up and get to the house.
Yeah.
Not that long of a walk. Should be fine. I get about 6 or 7 more steps at the most. And from directly behind me, about 30 yards, maybe 30, like somewhere between 10 to 30 yards behind me, it was close. I hear a scream. And it's not a scream of a human asking for help. It's more like a scream of an animal telling you to get the fuck away from me.
Really?
Or a scream that indicates, what the fuck are you doing here?
Right.
And I stop, right? I freeze. And because I'm in shock, like what? It was a high pitched, had vibrato, and was pretty short. It wasn't like a long, yeah.
Right.
You know, I can't even recreate it vocally. And so I stop like in the dirt sand and I turn around to look, because it's just instinct. It's just physical things happening now at this point. You get screamed at, you stop, and like, what was that? And then as I'm turning around, I realize, holy fucking shit, this is happening.
Yeah.
And I look back and I see nothing but pitch black darkness and trees.
Oh, no.
And the tiniest little bit of light coming from the sugar shack. And that's when I have this moment of realization, like, I am in a lot of trouble right now.
Mm-hmm.
My body physically now feels like I am the bottom of the food chain. I'm fucking dead.
Yeah.
I felt like I was in mortal danger in a way that I've never experienced in my entire life. So I tried to scream for Ed, but then I realized that I don't want Ed to hear me scream because he'll open the door and come out and he'll be even closer to this thing than I am. And simultaneously, I tried to scream the password, the code word for the security team, letting them know that they should be ready to shoot something,
Right.
which was avalanche. And if ever during the investigation, any of us ever said the word avalanche, that meant everyone should have their finger on the trigger of their gun. And so it's not a word to be joked with at all. Never be like, avalanche. You know, you don't even make a joke about avalanche.
Right.
So I am simultaneously screaming Ed and avalanche while I'm realizing I don't want Ed to hear me scream, and there is no avalanche to call for because they're at the hotel. So I'm like trying to scream as loud as I can while I'm trying not to scream at all.
Yeah.
So the craziest, weirdest fucking noise comes out of my mouth, right? I'm just like, ah! It's like when you fucking, it's like when
Right.
you're taking a piss and you fart while you're peeing. It's like forceful but meek, you know?
Yeah.
So, and I start booking up this driveway. And it feels like I was running for 15 minutes. When in reality, it was probably 15 seconds at the most. About 3/4 of the way up the driveway where I can see the white picket fence and I can see the house. I can see I'm close. I do the bravest thing I've ever done in my life by simply, as I'm running, just turn my head back behind me to see how close this creature is to me. And I turn my head back and I see nothing except darkness. And so I have extra hope to motivate myself to keep going even faster. And I get to the gate like won't close, and I'm like trying to close it, and then I'm realizing I'm in fucking mortal danger right now, and yet I'm trying to make sure the gate's closed. Like my mom's in my head going, "You're a guest at someone's house, don't leave their gate wide open." But then like subconsciously also, if I leave the gate open, is that like a subconscious invitation to the creature to come on in? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the thing could step over the gate if it's a Bigfoot. You know what I mean?
Right.
The gate was like 2.5 feet tall. So finally I get to the front door and I'm praying to God it's not fucking locked. Because everybody thought I was going down to the sugar shack to get my stuff and then come back and then just go to bed. So
Right.
if they went to bed already, they're not going to be paying attention if I ever showed back up, right? Ed
Right.
Brown, who's down at the sugar shack, he thinks I left to go sleep at the house. So if he doesn't see me until the morning or the next day,
Oh man.
he's not going to know I'm missing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No one's going to know I'm missing. I'm in that liminal space where I'm screwed. How far could a Bigfoot carry your body in 8 hours? You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to know the answer to that question. So I finally get into the house because it's not locked. I close the door behind me. I bolt it. I door lock it. They have those like little door things where they put up where it holds the handle. You know what I mean? They almost look like miniature crutches. They've got on those.
Oh,
They've
yeah.
got those for every door in their house while they sleep at night because they've had so many nights where some creature has just been outside banging on the walls of their house in the middle of the night,
Oh my God.
and then
That's that.
scream like
Yeah.
weird scream noises. Carolyn has heard the growl one time. Her and her dog heard it. I think it was during the daytime out at their house, and
Jeez.
immediately like made them quiver and like scream and like they ran inside. She
Oh,
woke
man.
up later in that same night. The growl happened, and their dog Ozzy, this beautiful like golden retriever, older dog, but such a great dog, a great like antenna for weird energy happening or creatures being around. She woke up in the middle of the night and Ozzy was just standing in the middle of the kitchen, like trembling and throwing up blood. The day the growl happened.
Oh wow.
Damn.
I did not hear the growl. I heard like a scream of some kind. I get into the house and there's someone in the kitchen, and they someone who was part of the investigation, but unfortunately they passed away recently. Um, he's like, "What happened to you? You look like you saw a ghost." And I go, "I don't. I heard. I heard. I heard. I was like trembling. I was crying a little bit. I was hyperventilating. I was out of breath too from running." Carolyn comes out because I try to recreate the noise. She immediately sees me and knows that I've had an experience. She comes, gives me a hug. We talk about it. And then, kind of for the next hour and a half, trying to talk me down, right? And then I realize, oh, I'm supposed to sleep in the dream chamber. I just like
Nightmare chamber now.
I can't sleep in the dream chamber after what just happened. So I switched rooms with the other guy because I was like, I can't sleep in the dream chamber tonight. And truth be told, I wasn't sleeping anywhere that night.
Yeah.
And so I'm up until about 6:30 in the morning, 6 in the morning when the sun comes up, or starts coming up, before I can even think about falling asleep because I'm so terrified. I just felt like I could hear it outside the window, like right behind the headboard of the bed where I was laying down, just kind of like shifting its weight back and forth on the wooden walkway that leads to a back deck.
Jeez.
That's what I just felt like I could hear that. And so I was terrified and, kept the lights on. And I fell asleep, and we had an open door policy that night. Everyone slept with their doors open to their room per Carolyn's request, just in case something was happening. We could all get in there quick, right? We could all hear each other scream or whatever else. So it didn't occur to me really, but the next day so finally I fell asleep, and I probably sleep for 3 hours at the most. My door's closed. I was like, oh, they probably just closed the door because everybody's up in the morning bustling around for breakfast, et cetera, and they just didn't want to wake me up. Turns out no one closed my door. Ed Brown later goes through a little handheld digital recorder that I had with me that night that I was recording with on my nightstand as I slept, because we were recording audio all the time when we slept
Right.
at this place. And I didn't even think I figured out how to get the audio recorder to work. Turns out I did, and it was recording the whole night. So he goes, the strangest thing happens at like whatever time it is on the thing, right? Like
Right.
6:15 in the morning. He's like, you just hear like, because the doors they had those little door jams. Those little triangles that you put in a door to keep it open?
Yeah.
Those little rubber things. I had one of those in my door.
Like a little doorstop thing.
A little doorstop, yeah. And
Yeah.
and it was carpet. It wasn't even like a hardwood floor. It was carpet. So it's not like the thing would just slide.
Right.
Whatever time it was, I obviously was asleep. You just hear You hear the door close. You don't hear someone like walk in. You don't hear footsteps from like someone in the house. And everybody said, no one said they closed my door in the morning, to the best of my remembrance. So that was also weird, right? And then, so the next day we wake up, I walk everybody through what happened. Dan, who was the warden, the game warden, he makes sure everybody stays off the driveway area because he wants to track my footprints. He wants to see what's going on. He wants to get to the evidence here.
Right.
He tracks my footprints after I show him my shoes. And then he kind of walks me through what happened. He goes, okay, this is what your footprints tell me. It looks like you walk off the patio. You get a handful of steps. You stop, and it looks like you turn. And then it looks like you start running after you've stopped. And then like the deepening of the footprints show me like a swivel in your feet,
Right.
like by like the heel of your foot, like swivels to the side. And then it looks like it goes back. And then the toe is deep, meaning that you started running.
That's a full
Like
sprint.
you started a run. And as we walk up the driveway, and he goes, and as you can see from the separation between your footprints, my guess is you've never run faster in your entire life.
I bet. I bet.
And so it was really amazing to have someone that knowledgeable there to reinforce the story, because you can feel fucking crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's a trail cam set up on a tree directly across the driveway from the sugar shack, right? So the sugar shack is here. The driveway is right there. You know, there's like the front porch, and then there's a little fire pit, and then a couple more feet, there's the driveway. And then right on the other side of this little driveway, there's a tree with a trail cam strapped to it, motion activated, to see if any activity happens while we're sleeping. The trail cam picks up Ed Brown and I walking down the driveway into the sugar shack that night. And then it goes off because we're inside and, you know, door closed or whatever, just hanging out for a few minutes while we talk, and I grab my stuff. The trail cam does not pick me up leaving the sugar shack, walking, stopping, then running, screaming and running.
Really?
It doesn't pick up any of that action. But it does pick up maybe a second and a half later, after this has happened, you see a strange white light flashing around on the side of the sugar shack, the outside wall that has the air conditioning unit in it, right? Yeah. That is facing up towards the house. Now, what that white light is, it is the flashlight in my left hand as I'm running up the driveway.
Oh.
That light from the flashlight is dancing around that area as I'm running, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, and the trail cam will pick up a flashlight light dancing around the side of a tiny shed in the middle of darkness, but it won't pick up a human being walking in front of it 15 feet away when it had just previously picked up that same human being walking in front of it.
Yeah.
Why the fuck doesn't it activate, right?
No kidding. Yep.
It's those malfunctions that we were talking about earlier. And it just drives you crazy.
Yeah.
Wondering why didn't it work in this situation. And I have friends who have different theories about what has happened here, and some of them involve like jumping to different dimensional jumps, things like this. I have no idea. Do I think it was a Bigfoot that screamed at me that night? I don't know. Do I think it was a skinwalker or one of those type creatures? I don't know. My indication is that it's probably not a Sasquatch.
Okay.
And But having said that, I have no idea what else to offer up, right, in its place. But I was so terrified. So that first night I barely slept. The next night I barely slept, and then I left. That was the end of our investigation, and I drove back to California from Florida as fast as I could.
So after
And
this experience, you didn't really have any desire to go back out and keep looking for this thing.
no, I mean, like up before this, leading up to this experience, I was slowly but surely collecting all of my camping gear and all the little things that only someone who really loves to camp would have,
Yeah.
like all the little things and like all these other trinkets and stuff for camping. Because on occasion, I would, when I was out on the road doing gigs, I would camp if I had a couple days off. I'd go to a state park and camp somewhere because it was just cheaper than hotels. Um, you know, I've not been camping since. I have no desire to camp at all. I even tried to get rid of all my camping gear to a friend of mine, but he wanted new stuff.
Mm.
Um, I I have no desire to go camping, and the only way I'll ever go camping again, regardless, is if I have a gun with me.
Yeah.
I'll never go camping again without a gun. I will own a gun at some point now, and people are like, well, a gun, like a handgun? I was like, yeah. They're like, well, is that going to stop a Bigfoot? And I was like, I'm not worried about stopping Bigfoot. I just need one bullet. And that bullet isn't for Bigfoot. You know what I mean? Like if I'm in a situation where it is me or Bigfoot, guess what? It's me every time. I'm not going to take my
Hey.
chances on what might happen.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
That's a scary thought. That.
I'll do myself a favor. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't think that would ever happen, and I don't anticipate that ever happening. And
Yeah.
I pray to God, lowercase g, that never happens, right? But because at the end of the day, the truth of the matter is, if that thing wanted me dead, I'd be dead.
Yeah.
I
Probably.
truly believe that. I truly believe that. And I mean, I felt it at a physical level that I was not the top of the food chain. That's only something you can experience. It's hard to describe it to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
If that thing wanted, whatever made that noise, if it wanted to kill me, it could have killed me. There's no way I'm preventing it. That's just what I know to be true.
Mm-hmm.
And I am better now. I don't have to. I can sleep in total darkness again finally. Because I was always a blackout curtains guy. I'm no longer afraid of the dark necessarily. I don't want to be out in the dark by myself in the middle of nowhere. That's not something I'm interested in, and that gives me anxiety thinking about it. But my therapist has been helpful. He's a PTSD therapist, and he's not a paranormal believer. He said, I don't care what it was that yelled at you. The only thing I'm concerned about is the effect it's had on you. So that was very helpful to have a medical professional, be very supportive. And,
Yeah.
And he 100% thinks, because I've asked him multiple times, do you think I'm crazy? And he's said, I'm telling you, you're not crazy.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I mean, are you sure? And he's like, I've devoted my whole life to this.
Yeah.
So that's been helpful. And yeah, and unfortunately, I think I've got to go because I'm running low on time. But that's the story that definitely changed my life.
Oh yeah.
And it's been a year and a half, so I'm kind of coming around to the idea that maybe it changed my life for the better. I definitely have a barometer now for that kind of energy.
Mm-hmm.
So if I ever feel that again, I know to get the hell out.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
So if that feeling ever comes over me again, I know exactly what to do in that situation. And I think I'll be better equipped at handling it as well. So it was a gift, I guess, in some kind of strange way that I was given.
Yeah, and that's wild.
Yeah, and it's man, I just thought I was dead. I mean, and it's like it's one of those things where it's like I'm not just gonna, oh, I'm dead. I had an aneurysm. It's like one of those things where it's I'm going to die, and it's going to be terrifying.
Oh yeah.
And painful. Yeah, and like it's going to be scary.
Rip you apart or something crazy. Oof.
Yeah, so but thankfully that didn't happen. And I have to focus on the fact that what did happen was, I got away.
Yeah.
or just wanted to scare me.
Yeah, like it was
And-
almost like it was a warning, because like you said, it would have if it could have killed you, it would have killed you.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
kind of a
And
warning for you.
so, what does that warning mean to never come back there? I don't know because I am going to go back,
Yeah.
but
You are gonna go back?
I am definitely going back to the property at some point.
Really?
Yeah, I was actually going to go like a month or so ago, but it didn't work out.
Damn.
I
You
will
wanna
go
just-
back to the
wanna get to the
property.
bottom?
I'm just going to go during the daytime, have a lunch, catch up with them,
Yeah.
see how it feels.
Yeah.
And then from there, from that point on, then later we'll think about if there's any overnight action happening.
You're brave,
I'm
man.
I'm a long ways away from going out and investigating in the middle of the night on that fucking property. I will tell you that.
Yeah. That's
That's not what I'm talking about. Unless I'm surrounded by 10 people who are all closely gathered to me every step we take.
yeah, man. That's wild. Even that, like, that's still like you said, that's the most scared you've probably ever been in your whole life, and I can only imagine.
Without a question. Never been more scared. No matter the biggest show I've ever had to perform in front of, like walking out on stage in front of 1,500 people, none of that even comes close. None of that. It's not even comparable in any way. It's laughable for me to even think about them in the same breath.
Wow.
Yeah, it's, and you know what? I don't think I'll ever be that scared again.
Yeah.
That's the good news. I don't think I'll ever be that scared again. So
Man, that is wild stuff. Well, yeah, we'll let you get to your other call. Would definitely appreciate you coming on. I don't think we're gonna be able to do the 6 questions this time, so he's got to go.
Yeah, we'll get you
we'll just
back
have to
on
do it
for-
again. We'll do
part two.
12 next time.
There you go.
We'll just
Yeah,
double.
we
We'll just
actually
double
do
it
have
up.
12, so
It's perfect.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you guys. Thanks for letting me share the story. I think the big takeaway for me is that a lot of people have shame attached to their paranormal experiences, and the more people who are talking about them, and the more people who are sharing their stories, the less likely someone is to feel like they'll never be able to share theirs.
yeah,
And just because we don't know the answers doesn't mean that they didn't happen.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's probably the most important thing for me, is to share that with people. And therapy is not to be frowned upon, is to be encouraged. If people have had traumatizing paranormal experiences, try to find a therapist you can trust who's open to hearing you out. And because I think therapy it's seldom ever talked about in this world, about people
Yeah.
needing to see someone to talk to. And it's important. It's important to try to process and integrate the experiences into your life so you can move forward in a better and more positive way.
Yeah, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head right there. Yeah, well, let our listeners know where we can find you, where we can support you, anything like that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Rysing. That's RYSING. So Rising, however you want to pronounce it. The same handle on Twitter. Me Paranormal You is a podcast that's everywhere. Podcasts can be found. There's over 600 episodes. Wait, no, I don't know. Do I have 6? I can't remember. I think we're coming up on 600. Who knows?
It's a lot.
It's been over 6 years. That's what it is. There's a ton of episodes, a lot of fun stuff. This is where the magic happens. It's kind of a newer podcast. But if you're interested in the paranormal stuff, Me Paranormal You is where to go to find that. And I actually recorded an episode the day after I returned from my road trip back from Florida. So everything's really fresh. And I just kind of record a solo podcast episode talking about that. So if you search around June 2019, I think the name of the episode is My Encounter with a Sasquatch, because at the time I believed it to be a Sasquatch, but I don't believe so anymore.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. We appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you
Oh
so
yeah,
much.
and by the way, free comedy everywhere. Spotify, Pandora. My last album, Free Love, is available for free. Download at my website at ryansingercomedy.com.
Okay,
Awesome.
you got it, man.
Cool. Well, thanks, guys. Be
Yeah,
good.
thank you.
Good
Have a good
chatting
one.
with you.
Yeah, catch you next time.
Okay, next time.